Guy, I want to ask you, especially you work in an area about resources, critical minerals, and you're from DRC, which the whole world knows in terms of its resource richness and the difficulties that has brought it. What are your reflections on this intersectionality of policy, diaspora, collaboration to get the best for Africa? Over to you.
No, thank you very much for the question, and thank you very much, EMY Africa, for inviting me to this event. The question is very pertinent in the sense that, as you said, DRC owns most of the minerals that the world needs. But it's not only a story of DRC. Most African countries have resources, whether it's critical mineral, agricultural products, water, you name it. The challenge we have as Africa is that we go to the negotiating table from a position of weakness. Right. And that needs to change. You know, we talk a lot about African agency reclaiming our national sovereignty, but when you look at the reform that needs to take place, one needs to understand that reform is redistribution of power. You're taking power away from someone, giving it to someone else. So, therefore, you get a lot of resistance, which are really orchestrated in a way to maintain the status quo. As you said, the current system is an extractive system inherited from the colonial power. So what we are doing at Misong is really working using digital transformation, policy advocacy, and strategic engagement. I'm just going to give you a strategic example. For the DRC, we hold 70% of cobalt and copper. Yeah. Most of the minerals are extracted, shipped to China. And therefore, the DRC, like the rest of Africa, remains very poor. And China is being criticized as raping Africa and then indebting Africa. When in reality, is it China's fault or Africa's fault? That's the real question. Obviously, being from the UK, I'm British now, and I work a lot with the previous government and previous members of parliament, where you understand that the level of geostrategic understanding was a little bit low because they don't understand Africa. MPs don't. You do, you're from Ghana, right? But a lot of your colleagues don't. That's true. And therefore, unless we, the diaspora, educate our MPs, educate our ministers, they're going to vote bills and laws that are against us. So in terms of how do we then use technology, advocacy, and diplomacy, 2-3 years ago, I was in Germany at the BMW leadership. We're discussing about off-taking agreements of our minerals. The comment was very simple. We need your cobalt, but we cannot buy it from you. So, but why? Because you got women, pregnant women, kids, digging the minerals with their bare hands. The reality is they still buy it. Yeah. But from a different angle, right? From China where it's all mixed up. So that's where technology comes in. The blockchain that allows to trace the flow of the minerals, which gives a certain premium, that gives them, the DRC and other African countries, a leverage to be able to sell the product better. And then to conclude, what we are working on at the moment, as an example, I'm sitting on an advisory board of a company called Buenasa, and we're building the first copper and cobalt refinery. Right. And to mimic or to use your word, the soil is not fertile at all. We're being attacked by our own people. But when you think about it, we are redistributing the supply chain. And that's where the UK comes in. Yeah. The UK has a huge role to play, and we've been advocating for them to play that role.
That it's skewed against us, but we still want to win. So what is it we do to win?
We will win first. Okay. So what it is we need to do, we are working with our colleagues in Misong on a framework for diaspora engagements. And we coined a framework called DIPLO. D stands for diplomacy, but not the traditional diplomacy. We talked about Africa being rich in various resources. When you look at the OPEC countries, they negotiate from a position of a force because they have a block. They can control the prices. when you look at the critical minerals, for instance, you've got the DRC negotiating their own deal, you've got Zambia doing it, negotiating their own deal, Namibia, and they're all negotiating deals separately. And therefore, we are weakened. So we need to create an alliance of critical minerals, of agricultural producers, of what to produce, and stuff like that. Now the question then becomes, do we create a bloc or an alliance of countries holding the same mineral, or countries holding complementary minerals useful for the production of EV batteries or semiconductors and stuff like that? So that's the first level of the framework. Diplomacy, but a tactical and geostrategic diplomacy, which will have to be led by the public and the private sector combined. It cannot be left to the state alone. So that's one. And the diaspora has a role to play in educating and building the bridges. I stand for investments. You talked about 128 billion remittance into Africa. That's a lot of money. And I think there was a question earlier on about how do we go back and how do we contribute to the country. Nigeria is emitting a diaspora bond.
Yes.
Diaspora bonds. They've done it before successfully. 200 million oversubscribed. This one will be exactly the same. Now, what we need to consider to say, okay, right now, I send money back home, all of us certainly are sending money back home. But that money is used for food, medication, consumables. The money is not producing. The way for the money to produce is to create diaspora bonds linked to sustainability. The money has to be used for infrastructure projects which will unlock the economic development of the continent. Okay. That's where the technology comes in, because then you can use blockchain to enforce governance, you can use AI to predict risk and stuff like that. So that's where the eye of the investment comes in. P is for public. Our colleague has talked about, Visit Rwanda. The public perception is critical for Africa. We lose as a continent 4.2 billion due to perception, because when we borrow money on the international market, we borrow it at a higher rate, simply because of the perception. And the perception, when we say the winner always tells the story, right? So we need, as Africans, to start telling our own stories. And that's important. And that's me talking to my wife, who's Sicilian, is about the student talking to the teachers, but also the members of the public speaking to the parliamentarian. So that's how we start taking control of our own narrative. That's one. Secondly, is to make sure that we have in place what we call a narrative analysis on an ongoing basis. A lot is being said about Africa, which is not being monitored. And we don't have a place to counterbalance that. So that's the L. L is for learning and skills, and O, reorganization of those structures. And I think with that framework, we should be in a position to start winning.
So that's prescription Diplo.
Yes, okay, I'll try to answer two questions, 2 or 3. So how do I work with the Congolese government and other governments? I think the first question, or the first answer would be that you have to show value. We spoke about the fact that African, when you're young, what you say is not really taking into consideration. So showing value by being at the right place and forcing our way to be at the right table. So that's what we did. We organized trip. Last year, for instance, we traveled with the former defense secretary and some investors on the ground for them to see, which means that when you are with those type of people, it allows them to pay attention to what you actually have to say. And I think most of you guys are young. That's something we did. In terms of the partnership and SMEs in Africa, there is the UK Export Finance, for instance. They support the export facilities for UK SMEs and partner with African SMEs. The challenge is that they don't cover certain regions, and Congo is one of them. They don't cover Congo. It's on a case-by-case basis, again, due to the narrative. That's where engaging, explaining, having roundtable discussion helps break those barriers. And then the last question about critical mineral, and whether it's a good idea to create rating agencies. Rating agency is good, but it's not enough. We just need to make sure that the narrative, the infrastructure, the governance structure is there in place before starting to think about the rating agencies.